Welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon reviews. 4 reviews up this week. The first of which is, I believe this is called Mokoko X. Mokoko X is claims to be inspired by games like Volfried, Kix, and Gal's Panic. And really, out of the 3, Gal's Panic is the most apt in terms of its aims. Though in terms of its gameplay, I'd have to go with Kix since it has the big creature thing there. And boy, does that get weird. As there are scenarios for each girl where it's just a whole bunch of insane prattle, if I'm being honest. Like you're dealing with the spirit of an emperor who, wanted to do things. Or like you're dealing with the personification of a mobile ad as, just probably the most creative thing going on here. Not sure what Volfried is, without looking it up, but Gal's Panic I do remember knowing about. Never played it. A surprise. The sexy time versions of Kix never came out in the West as far as I know. And I gotta say it's a bit unusual to try to recreate that gameplay in the, not just in this modern day, but on a piece, on a PC, and this does have console versions. It's also out on the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox One ecosystem. I know because I got offered codes for that. And while technically the PC version doesn't have nudity built into it, there is a free patch you can download off of Steam that restores everything to its glory. But like I said, the actual authorial intent here is to basically look at naked women. As was the Gal Panics franchise back in the day. The thing is, those tended to be, at least they started out as arcade games. They probably came to the console and were censored in some fashion, but were, if I'm knowing how these things work, still pretty suggestive. It's just, it was basically a way of getting people to pay for porn by, taking chunks out of a field in order to see the photo underneath. And that's sort of the case here, but it's got a modern spin. That is to say that, what you can do with modern technology, you can have a physics engine. So a lot more bobbing and swaying, let's say, than what you could do in 1990. And with that in mind, that's the premise of everything here. This game was shit. I don't think there's a kind way to put it. Now, I've talked about Kix-alikes and this genre, as it were, before, and I've said the central concept and even the general execution are really hard to mess up, but it's not infallible. And this game is a good example why. It fucks up in 2 ways. One, fairly obvious when you actually play the game, and that is the actual drawing of lines controls very stiff and awkward. A lot of the time I couldn't really get accurate, cuts, if it is the word to be used there. And that's really, and I know the developers knew this was a problem because they did something that, they had instead of a live system, they had a heart system. if you get hit with one of the lines there, you don't die. You don't lose a life. You just go back and you lose a heart. I know it might not seem like much of a difference, but there's a difference because this is losing a hit point versus losing a life. Like if you got hit and kicks, you would die and you'd have to go through a screen to go back. None of that here, unless you lose all 4 hearts. So they knew their movement wasn't so good. But the thing that really killed this were the mystery boxes. I'm not. So, in an attempt to spice up the gameplay, add some bonus points, what have you, they've got all these boxes, question mark boxes, scattered across the landscape. The thing is, they're solid. They're actual obstacles. So if you're going through, if you're drawing a line and you hit one of these things, you actually hit it and you stop, and you have to remaneuver around them, which is, once again, not a thing in actual kicks. And it's also, this game likes to layer stuff as the rounds go through, culminating in the multi-boss battle. So everything gets very cramped very quickly. It's a failure of design execution pretty thoroughly, if I'm being honest. Because, the deaths feel like, more often than not, it's because of clunky controls and just either awkward or flat out bad design. Like, real talk, this is probably the worst kicks-alike I've ever played. At least, what's coming to mind. And as far as buying this for the, let's call it, porn quotient, or just if you're playing on the consoles, I don't know how this fared on the consoles because I got the Steam version. So things might be a bit different there, but though those versions, you don't get the nudity, which, I don't know, seems to fly in the face of the point of the whole endeavor. Because this game isn't really worth it for the gameplay. And once again, as far as, the girls, I mean, it's standard anime fare, I'm being honest. Like, they exist, and I'm like, I have the infinite reaches of the internet for such things. I don't need to, and it's like, the story here is bug fucking insane, I'll give it that. But it's not anything I'd advocate plunking $10 down for, which is how much this is going for. Soundtrack was pretty forgettable to boot. So wouldn't advocate spending $2 on this soundtrack either. Yeah, it's all in all, it's pretty much one of the worst games I've played all year so far. I won't say it's flat out unplayable, but it's unnecessarily frustrating and aggravating due to bad mechanics, bad design, and all that stuff. I think that'll about wrap my thesis here. Any questions, comments, or concerns about Mokoko X?
Not much.
Okay. Petty?
Aside from sort of the general why.
I think I'm good.
Well, once again, because porn. Like that's the easy.
Yeah, but it's like inefficient.
Mm-hmm.
Well, once again, it's in the first line of the bullet points here on Steam. Mokoko X was inspired from the arcade games like Volfried, Kicks, and Gals Panic, a popular gaming style in the late 1980s. Mokoko X looks to resurrect the soul of the arcade genre while adding a modern touch. There, that's why. They wanted to do this, but now it's just this is a game concept that worked better in those, in actually getting money from people. I'm sure there will be people who buy this because, it's, at least the Steam version, it is porn. So there is a market for that. It's just the specific, time and place that, say, Gals Panic came out in doesn't exist anymore. Hasn't existed for a couple of decades. In the late 80s and the early 90s, porn was, by definition, harder to get. I can't speak all that much for Japan necessarily, but, I do know that, like, what we know as the internet there was fairly limited in 1990. And years thereabouts, when this kind of game was popular. It's like, we are no strangers to sexy time games, but, they tend to be games in the sense that they are visual novels most of the time. Not all the time. You do get the occasional game here that's wanting to intersperse actual gameplay in the proceedings. This is on the simpler end. On the more complex end, having a full-on strategy RPG attached to your porn. Once again, that's stuff we've covered, not necessarily here, but, on the very short revival of Up Late with Mace. Right. Anything else?
I think I'm good.
All right. So, yeah, that'll about do it for Mokoko X. Be sure to tune in after the break, as Petty Fan will be reviewing Scarf.